Alright guys and girls, this is a Longplay review for Nebulus on the Amstrad CPC, released by Hewson in 1988. Now this is also known in the US as Tower Toppler and was also later renamed Castellian for the Game Boy and NES, and then those were then later renamed Kyoro Chanland in Japan. So, no messing about this time, we're going to get straight into the long play and get the game booted up. Let's have a look at the loading screen here. A very nice loading screen there, if a little bit overly red for the background. Otherwise, pretty good stuff. And here we are on the title screen with some lovely music. And we're going to hear this music all the way throughout the game, so we're going to pretty much jump straight into the action here. A few credits there, we'll come on to them in a bit. But we're going to move on to the first tower here. So, we are on the planet of Nebulus, and some strange creatures have been building giant towers in the sea. It's your job to destroy them. There are 8 levels or towers in total, and the aim of the game is to get your little picky froggy hybrid out from his sub at the bottom of the tower to the top before the time runs out, and then the tower is destroyed and you move on to the next one of 8. But yeah, apparently your character's name here is Pogo, although weirdly the Amstrad boxer manual doesn't mention his name. According to the coder, he's part frog and part pig. And the things that fire from you there, apparently they are snowballs. So yes, little Pogo there can run into doorways and corridors and zap round to the other side of the tower there. You can throw snowballs to destroy the red bouncing balls. They are the only enemies that you can destroy apart from destructible blocks. The black balls you can hit, but they can only be frozen for a short amount of time. And of course there are little platform blocks that will disappear. You can't tell if they're going to or not. They are the same colour as all the other blocks in the level. So it's just about remembering them. But of course guys, the big thing here we haven't really even mentioned yet is this wonderful kind of 3D rotational effect on the tower. I mean, this is the game's big selling point, and like its wow factor and USP. That's a really, really skillful bit of programming there, and it's lovely to see. Oh, I screwed up there. Look at that! See, that's quite generous of the collision detection there, actually. Now, your little Pogo is quite slow to turn around and face the opposite direction, but the game compensates by if your bum touches an enemy, it doesn't kill you, or like the edge of your bum or whatever. Now, I can probably do this tower a lot quicker. I screwed up there before. I've actually done better runs on this game. Much, much better runs than the one you will see here today. But I've fallen short at some point and died on tower 5 or 6 or something like that, or 7. This one, on this run, I managed to get all the way through. But ironically, it was by far one of my worst runs. In terms of like the earlier towers and making a few mistakes here and there, there's going to be some close calls, and I can do it a lot quicker now after playing the Amiga version a lot recently, which is what prompted me to do this game today, because the Amiga version I've been playing in the Tubers High Score Challenge, and I thought I'd practice on both at the same time and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because the layout of the levels are like pretty much consistent across all the versions of the game, including like enemies and yeah, all the towers are pretty much identical. So what I learnt on the Amiga version that I could apply here, and vice versa to the Amstrad one. Yeah, so Pogo can jump as well. The jump is not much used to get. You can't really use the jump to get over enemies if they're on the same like horizontal level as you. But obviously, jump between gaps is what you're going to use the jump for. Might have screwed up here. Yep. Like I said, guys, this is like one of my earlier runs. Well, actually, no, one of my weaker runs. And yeah, fairly early on in my practice attempts, but I managed to clear it. So here's my run. as crap as some of the mistakes are in it. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. We're here to like play through the game to the end, show you how to beat the game. And the game is basically a giant memory test. It would be unfair of me to say that there's no skill involved here. It's more about memory and learning the levels, because you don't know if some blocks are going to just disappear under your feet. There are certain routes you have to take, and it gets a little bit puzzly later on as well. And it's all about learning the timings, and then generally just being patient and not rushing the game. So yeah. So it's all about memory, patience, and timing. Nebulus. Yeah, it's a giant memory test basically. There is a bit of skill involved. Sometimes you find yourself in sticky situations because you made a mistake and you need to get out of it quickly. That's where your skill comes in adjusting to that. I thought I might get my feet there. Some very good collision detection against your sprites. There is some iffy collision detection sometimes of your snowball connecting with like bouncing red balls. Actually, I found that in all the versions. Even the Amiga version had some issues with your snowball connecting with red balls or whatever. But anyway, we might see that happen later on in the playthrough here. So that's Tower 2 done. Little Pogo gets in his sub and arrives on the next one. This is Tower 3. So, yeah, let's talk about the coder. Now, the original designer, coder, and graphics artist was a chap called John M. Phillips. And this was his follow-up to Impossible, and is also inspired by seeing Uridium in action. Now, the original game of Nebulus was actually developed on a BBC Micro, although weirdly, it never appeared on that system, ironically. Now, the BBC Micro had a cross-compiler that you could hook up to a C64 and Speccy, and unusually, he did both the Speccy and the Commodore 64 versions, because normally there would be separate coders due to the different chips involved. But anyway, with the C64 version coming out first, that's the original one in my eyes anyway. As for the towers and how they were designed, well, they were done on a sort of flat grid, 16 cells wide, and you can imagine how difficult it was when actually put into the computer and then wrapped around, sort of thing. Now, John, he did actually want to link the towers together in some way, but ultimately that idea had to be abandoned. However, this did give birth to the doors and corridors where we see in the game now, which ended up being quite a great gameplay mechanic and an easy way to get out of the way of that wibbly wobbly red thing there, which plagues you throughout the game. But yeah, that ended up being a good gameplay mechanic. And as for another one, Pogo firing the snowballs, I mean, this was a later addition, quite late on, to add a bit more gameplay value to the game. Now, as I said earlier, the John did the C64 version first, then spent a month doing the Speccy one, but unfortunately was rather disappointed with it, mostly because it was stuck in monochrome. Both were out for Christmas 1987. He then went on to do the Amiga and Atari ST versions, but apparently John did help out a bit with the Amstrad version here. And he then later did the PC-DOS one, but there's loads of different versions, which we'll go into in a little bit, actually. As we move on to the next tower here. See, there's a score there for technique. I honestly, I don't know how that's judged or scored in the game. I've never worked it out. But if anyone knows, please let me know in the comments below. But the Amstrad conversion here was handled by a chap called Chris Wood, with John's assistance, of course. Now, Chris's most famous game on the CPC is probably Solomon's Key for US Gold. Other notable work includes Neverworld, Super Hang-On, Battle Valley, and Android 2. And the music, if you can't tell, is done by the always excellent Dave Rogers. So many great tunes from him, mostly for Hewson. These include Synapse, Cybernoid 1 and 2, Stormlord, Deliverance, Uridium Marauder, which we featured on this channel a few months ago, and many, many more. And it's brilliant as always here. Love the tune here. He has a signature sound that you can always tell it's Dave Rogers, which is a mark of a great video game music composer. Just a shame it's the same tune all the way through. It might start to get a bit... potentially maybe get a bit repetitive over time, but really it's such a nice varied tune. It never really outstays its welcome for me, but there you go. Maybe not everyone will agree with that. Looking in the Amstrad manual, it does unusually state the technical data of the game, which is odd to see, but the sort of thing Hewson like to do. Of which I will quote. It says, rotational 3D scrolling with precise hidden surface removal running at 17 frames per second. Well, there you go. So we know the game is moving around at 17 frames per second. I think that's pretty much for me always like the kind of the standard frame rate you need to hit at the very, very least. Anything lower than that and you really sort of start to notice the difference with your human eyes. A lot of good games around that era ran at least 17 or 17.5 frames per second. I think probably something like RoboCop Chase HQ and stuff like that is around about that mark. I don't know. It's really, really hard to actually measure that, but yeah, that sounds about right. Anything from 17 frames per second upwards is like acceptable and good in my eyes, at least on the Amstrad. But it's nice that you actually sort of put that in the manual. Strange thing to add. Be very careful here. Oh, I had to drop down there. Thankfully, you land on the platform just below. You can go straight back up again. Often you might find me waiting around a little bit to spawn the red wibbly wobbly thing. It's a bloody annoying thing. You can't shoot it with a snowball to stun it or kill it, sadly. So often you just find me waiting on a platform just for a few seconds to spawn it before I move on. Now here's a little trick to get past this level. Go to the end here and actually use the red wibbly wobbly thing to get you down to the exit. There you go, look at that. In fact, I think that is the only way you can reach the exit. I think there's at least about 2 or 3 times in the game where you have to do that. And again, score for extras there. If anyone knows what that is for, do let me know. I think that might be for shooting balls, I think, or blocks as well. Nice tower crashing down effect there. And I love the little bit there as you get in the sub and exit the sub at the start of a level. We'll talk about this in more detail in a little bit, but other versions of the game have a mini level in between the towers, which sadly is missing on the Amstrad and also the Specky version. That's a bit of a shame. Normally it's a side-scrolling, so to shoot them up in the sub, shooting fish to collect them for bonus points. Anyway, never mind. So this is tower number 5 of 8. I'm just waiting for the wibbly wobbly to spawn. There it is. And just go in the door just before it reaches you, and you should be safe there. I've screwed up here. I should have waited for that to wrap all the way around. Thankfully, not far to backtrack. Like I said, guys, not my best run here. This was quite early on in practicing, and I managed to sort of do it. Later runs, I'm a lot more efficient and remembering stuff. Because as I said earlier, guys, this game is pretty much a memory test. So the longer you've played it for, and the more you've played it, the better you get at the game. Which is generally kind of true of all games, but this one especially because of, yeah, memory test. You need to know to drop back down there, and there'll be more. There'll be situations here, actually not far past this bit, where you kind of really need to know what you're doing, having played the level before. So, if you're coming in cold to this level and subsequent levels, don't expect to beat it on your first attempt. It is kind of a bit like, I suppose. Oh God, I screwed up there. I suppose in a way it's kind of a bit like Rick Dangerous, really. You kind of need to know where the traps are, having played the game before. But if you're stuck in it, though, guys, there is a cheat mode you can activate. So if you're in game, you can activate it by pressing one of 4 possible key combinations, and then you can sort of change. I've not tested this myself, but it's on the CPC Power website anyway. So you can either do Shift plus C and W, or Shift plus M and D, or Shift plus D and P, or Shift plus H and L. Try each of them, and the timer should stop if you've activated it successfully. Now you can press Shift and 1 to 8 to skip levels, and Shift plus 9 to disable the wibbly wobbly thing. And you can press Tab to turn the cheat off. If you want to learn a bit more about the making of the game as well, Retro Gamer magazine did a very, very decent making of article in their issue 168, or Load 168 as they call it. They actually interviewed John himself, the original coder and designer, and a converter of many of the versions. So actually, let's talk about other versions of the game now. Let's get that over and done with. So we have the... let's talk about the original first, the Commodore 64 version. Whilst the colours aren't as strong and vibrant as the Amstrads, this is still really fantastic graphics for the C64. It also plays a lot smoother and faster, although there's no tuning game, which is a bit strange for the Commodore. It does have the sub shoot 'em up minigame in between levels. That is actually quite stunning looking with its parallax scrolling, so I'm actually quite jealous that has it, and with the parallax. So yeah, probably going to be my favourite 8-bit version, just tell you now. Next up, the ZX Spectrum one, also done by John. It has some really crappy beeper music on the title screen and limited sound effects in game. I'll take the 4th door here, and then on the next level up, take the 3rd door. You need to have known that before getting here. A lot of it's a bit of a trial and error in places here. We'll just wait for the wibbly wobbly there. So Specky version. The main game window is also in monochrome. It maybe plays just a touch faster than the CPC version. But it's so hard to notice. But I'd go with the Amstrad version here over the Specky one. Again, there's no sub mini game, that's both missing on the Specky and Amstrad versions, but the Specky version is still really, really decent, and you'll have a lot of fun with it if you enjoy the Amstrad or the Commodore one. Moving on, it's an old school machine, Atari 7800, which lasted a very long time actually. Now, the Atari version was known as Tower Toppler. The music is really poor on the title screen. It sounds like it's out of tune with each other. It's kind of weird. So there's thankfully no music in game, but it does have really, really good sound effects and has really exceptionally great graphics for the 7800. So I'd place this version between the Amstrad and the Commodore versions. Above the CPC, but not quite as good as the Commodore 64. It does have the sub mini game with parallax scrolling 2 on the go, but is not as fast. There was an Atari 8-bit home conversion that was being developed, but was sadly cancelled. I think it was just destined for the Atari XE console. A prototype cartridge has been found, though, if you're an Atari fan and a Nebulus fan. Go check that out. Now, onto the 8-bit consoles, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. It's now got another name change to Cassilian. Never pronounced that very well. Cassilian. And it's nice to see that David Whittaker of many Amstrad computer game music fame is doing the NES music, and it sounds really good. But yeah, the NES version is basically kind of a mix of the Commodore 64 and CPC versions. It's faster than the CPC and more like the Commodore 64, although it's not quite as fast as the C64, but with the bold colours of the CPC. This also features a new mini game replacing the sub one that's a side-on platformer collecting jewels, and it's really quite good. Game Boy version, again known as Cassilian here, Whilst this is quite fast, it's not entirely smooth with it though. It doesn't look as good, and there's something off with the rotation here. Just doesn't look right, so I'd place it alongside the Specky version. But it does have the platformer minigame of the NES version. Moving on to the 16 bits, the Commodore Amiga. Well, this just looks absolutely lovely, and arguably, I'd probably say the best version of Nebulus. But I'm surprised to not find any music in game, kind of like the C64 version then actually. The Atari ST, identical to the Amiga version, pretty much as expected. But with not as good music or sound effects, and the frame rate on the sub level isn't as good. It also got a release on the PC DOS. Has some absolutely awful music on the title screen, as to be expected from the era. Difficult bit here. I got very lucky there. And the frame rate seems to be the worst of all the versions. Very difficult jump now because you hit your head on the ceiling, and some difficult jumps to do here because you have to do fire and right at exactly the same time before you hit the platform ahead, otherwise you sort of bounce off it. So that's actually some very difficult jumps there, believe it or not, at the end. Anyway, so we'll talk about the DOS version. So yeah, the frame rate seems to be the worst of all the versions. It's made worse by the bricks and the towers being sort of coloured in with a stippling effect, which just emphasises the problem with the rotation. But it's a nice sprite, and it's still quite a decent conversion. We're actually going to move on to the 32 bits now, because believe it or not, this actually got a release on the Acorn Archimedes. And comparing it to the Amiga version, it's got different but very nice sounding new music on the title screen. It's got better sound effects in game than the Amiga version too. But I don't think it looks as nice, nor is the frame rate as good. Because that's strange to me. I would have thought a 32-bit version would be better here over the 16-bit. There you go. Some obscure conversions as well. Nebulus also ended on the Symbian Phone OS, which is a popular phone operating system for many companies, like Nokia, I think especially, until its demise a decade ago when iOS and Android came to prominence. I've only seen screenshots of it, and it looks like a slightly souped-up conversion of the Amiga one. Nebulus also appeared on the Wii Virtual Console, which I think is the Commodore 64 version. And there was actually a sequel to Nebulus, Nebulus 2, which appeared on the Amiga, but other versions were sadly dropped or cancelled. And let's finally talk about something relevant to the Amstrad again. Lastly, a sort of remake of Nebulus exists on the Amstrad. This was entered into the CPC Retro Dev competition a few years ago by Cesar of C&G Soft, called Frog-a-Lot. So it has the same basic gameplay, but you play as a frog that can jump a lot further and freely. It's a little bit more open and less linear, and introduces a much welcome energy bar where you don't get knocked down to a lower level. Instead, it just drains your energy. And it tends to play a lot faster than this version, but maybe not as good frame rate. But if you're a fan of Nebulus, you must check Frog-a-Lot out. You need to know here to take the 3rd lift, and then you'll be taking the 4th lift next time. Just going as far as I can. The balls have unfortunately dropped down there. Best not go chasing them for points. You notice, guys, as well, I've got a load of extra lives as well. So you do need to get rid of that platform there, so don't worry, that isn't quite a mistake. There may be a quicker way of doing that bit there, but you need to get rid of that block so you can get to that last lift there. Now take the 4th lift rather than the 3rd one. Watch out for the ball here, get ready to shoot. It's not spawned on me yet, there's 2 of them though. Right, to get to this one you need to jump into the block there so you drop straight down. If you fall off, if you just walk off the edge, you're likely to slide off the lift block there and fall down further. There you go, that's Tower 7 I believe. We're now on the final tower. So, just quickly, magazine reviews. I always like to talk about this. This was reviewed in the June 1988 issue 33 of Amstrad Action magazine. And they liked it a lot, awarding it Master Game status. They really didn't criticise anything in the game, actually, except to say the tune was only above average, which I find rather harsh. It's an excellent tune. However, the same tune over and over may get repetitive, I guess. Very, very tough final level here. Just go right soon, straight from the off. Again, you need to know that. They gave Amstrad Action gave the graphics 92%. Can't really argue that too much of that. I really struggle here with this ball, so bear with me for a minute. Graphics 92%, Sonics 76%, which I feel quite harsh actually, because they're really good. Grab factor 94% and stain power 90%, with an overall AA rating of 93%. Yeah. I gotta be honest, when I first played Nebulus, I was kind of wowed by the rotating tower effect, like everyone else. I loved the look of the graphics, I loved the music being played, but I got wrecked really quickly, really early, and I got rather frustrated with the game, and I really struggled to beat the first tower. It kind of put me off playing it more, actually. I got a bit fed up of it and sort of shelved it for a while. Coming back to it a few years later again similar experience. I think you've really got to dedicate yourself to this game and practice it over and over, and maybe make some notes, because it is, as I said, kind of a big memory test. But probably, guys, the best version to go for overall is either the C64 or the Amiga, depending if your preference is 8 or 16-bit. Right, interesting bit here, actually, guys. There's 3 enemies that will spawn above you, and I'm trying to sort of see... Look, did you see that there? That was like 2 spawning there. What I'm trying to do there is spawn them slightly off of each other, because right above my head, there's 3 platforms you've got to jump straight across. There's the 3rd one spawning. If they're all coming down, those 3 there's actually 4 in total, one far to the left, don't worry about that one. But if all 3 are coming down at exactly the same time as each other, the jumps across here are absolutely impossible. So what you want to do, just rewind to where I went. Oh, did you see that spawn? I've just mucked up my jump there. And just try and move very, very carefully to spawn them individually off kilter or off sync of each other, so you have a chance to do this jump section here. Because I'm going to go for it now. First one, second one, third one. Look how tight that is. But if that 3rd one had been coming down in line with the first 2, that would have been like basically impossible. And the game is there. You basically soft locked because you can't go any further from that point. You might as well just kill yourself and start the level over again. That is the one big fault. It's one tiny section, but that is the one big fault I found in the Amstrad version. I don't know if it really kind of happens in the other versions, because I haven't really got that far. The Amiga one, I've got to the level 7 of 8, so I've not seen if that does happen. But yeah, that's a big problem. Obviously, you're not seeing me demonstrate it there because I managed to get them spawning off of each other at different rates and times. But yeah, that could be very frustrating if you're just rushing through that section below them before they spawn. You basically mucked up the level and you're soft locked. Just gonna have to take my word for it. But watch out if you're gonna try and beat this game yourself. Watch out for that on this final tower. So yeah, I'm gonna do a summary here. So the Amstrad version, whilst yeah a bit lethargic in comparison to like the Commodore 64, is still flipping good. But all versions share the same frustration, with like the snowballs sometimes not connecting when you shoot them out with the bouncing balls. They can sometimes just go straight past them. That's really bloody annoying. There's some awkward jumps where hitting another platform can be fatal. Just getting the right distance and the fire button press exactly right. The longer you hold down the fire button, I think the further you'll jump. So just a tiny light press the fire button, he does a slightly smaller jump. It's hard to notice, but it is there. And on all the versions I've played, it's kind of a bit off, the timing. But yeah, so that could be a bit hit and miss at times. There's some issues with the enemy spawns that we just talked about a minute ago. But I personally don't rate it as highly as Amstrad Action. So I think overall, guys, muck that up there. I think this is an 8.5 out of 10 from me as a final review score. I think that's fair. It's not for everyone, this game, but it's bloody brilliantly done. It's a really unique kind of idea, with a unique look and style, and you've got to applaud that. Lovely graphics, lovely music, great sound effects with the music. I'm just going to use the corridor and door there to get away from the wibbly wobbly there. Everything's in place. I think the gameplay falls down a little bit because it does become a bit of a memory test, but it does mean it's very completable. If you want to spend the time and effort to learn the game, you can do it. I noticed there was 4 doors with like empty space below them above there. Some of them will lead to your doom dropping down like where I am now. That is the final set of doors at the top of the tower, and one of the 4 will be the exit. 3 of them will lead to your doom, pretty much. So again, you'll need to have played this level before and worked out which door it is. Unless you've done the rest of the level really, really quickly and you've got plenty of time to come back around and get up there again. But you'll see. I think it's door number 2 or 3 when we get there. I've just had a brain fart there. Forgot which door it was. I'm pretty sure it's door number 3. Anyway, so yeah, it's not going to be the best run I've ever done here with the best time. Oh, here we go. Finally, we got to the exit. And it's door number 3. There you go. And that is Nebulus completed, guys. Now, if you're playing the non-bug fixed version, the game will crash very, very shortly when the tower gets destroyed to the bottom. Here, the sub doesn't arrive, I think, and the game freezes. But with the fixed version, we get the ending screen, which is just a quick congratulations message that flashed up very quickly there. And there's my final score there, 39,220. I can do much better, but there you go. That's my run, and I'm done with Nebulus now. And I'm kind of glad I've beaten it. And I'm going to wash my hands of it now. I'll probably never play Nebulus again. Then again, it'll probably get requested on an Am stream, and I'll say, yeah, why not in a year's time or something like that. There you go. So that's Nebulus from Hewson. I'm going to give that an 8.5 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think, and girls, what score you're going to give this game. What mark out of 10 would you give it? Any thoughts and feedback, please let me know in the comments below. And if you're watching this on the week of release, have yourselves a very, very Merry Christmas, as best you can under the circumstances. And I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please click a like below, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And over that way, there's another video for you to check out. Xyphoe out.